Fastball USA's Mike Ryan is the baseball power training expert. Learn to hit harder and throw faster right now.
Welcome, everybody. This is Mike Ryan from the Fastball USA Training Center, the owner and director of baseball training at Fastball USA here in Chicago. And welcome back to our second podcast event. I hope you enjoyed the first one. We got a lot of good feedback on it, so we're creating our second podcast event, and I appreciate you guys joining us. Today's title of today's podcast is What Pro Scouts Are Looking For and Why. And is your training matching up with what scouts are looking for, or is it dramatically off on what the scouts are actually looking for? So welcome back to our second podcast. It's been a crazy week here at Fastball USA. One of the exciting events that we've had happen is our student signing day. Those are going on to continue their education and play college baseball at the college level. There'll be more signing here in the near future that I'm more than happy to share with you in future podcast events and emails and social media. But I want to take an opportunity to congratulate those who did sign the other day, and that includes some of our students. That includes Ethan Routson, who signed and will be attending Dallas Baptist University in the fall. Joey Hanley, who will be going to North Central University, that is in Naperville, Illinois. And then Jack Bellinger will be going to Illinois State University, as well as Connor Rektorski, who will be going to Western Illinois University. And from the softball end, Anissa Iliopoulos signed with Rutgers University. All signed the other day, so it's obviously an exciting time in their lives. And it certainly is a great reminder for me of how great of an opportunity I have to work with these athletes, and to see them grow and develop is an outstanding thing. The other thing that's happened in this past week, we just completed the Ron Wolforth pitching camp, the fall event, and it was just an outstanding event. We had 36 athletes attend that event here in Chicago. Coach Wolforth brought a staff out, and they just did a great job of coming out, communicating with everybody, and it was just an outstanding thing. We had a lot of great feedback, and what I wanted to announce on this podcast is we were going to have another Ron Wolforth pitching camp event at the end of January. So mark the calendar for January 29th, 30th, and 31st. Ron Wolforth will be coming back to Fastball USA in Chicago. So if there's anybody out there that has not experienced a Ron Wolforth pitching camp, or you'd like to attend another one, he's coming back on January 29th, 30th, and 31st. Coach Wolforth and his staff does a great job. And every one of these, we've had close to 20 of these now. I learned something in every one that we've had. So if you get an opportunity, if you're pitching passionate, that's definitely an event to attend. Also coming up, we have the Explosive Hitter 2016 Elite Hitting Camps, which is a new camp for 2016. What we've done is we've included a power toolbox with that. So those who are coming out and spending the weekend with us, you're going to get take-home items, including measuring device, radar tools, connection tools in terms of improving technique. You're going to get a 21-day written plan, and you're also going to get a follow-up video analysis from that camp. So that is the Explosive Hitter Elite 2016 camps. And then, of course, we have the Total Baseball Power camps coming up as well. So with that said, let's move on with the purpose of our podcast here. And there's two questions that I have. Number one is what are scouts looking for? Do you know what scouts are looking for? And secondly, is the purpose of your training or your instruction reinforcing that you'll get better at the things that scouts are looking for? So let's start with this. I always people will talk about in general the 5 tools of what scouts are looking for. And I'm going to simplify this for you real fast. I like to talk about the big 3 because it's the big 3 that many people out there just assume you either have it or you don't have it. So let me start with the big 3 so you understand in terms of what a scout is actually looking for. So let's start with number 1. Let's start with arm strength. Okay, the assumption is most people, you either have it or you don't have it. So from a position player standpoint, a scout is looking for arm strength in the field. So in the past, that's been a kind of a subjective way of grading, and scouts have their own way of grading that. But now more than ever, a number is put behind that tool. So you will see in the StatCasts and everything they're showing in Major League Baseball on TV now, they'll actually measure how fast the ball's coming out of the outfielder's hand or the infielder's hand, and now even the catcher's hand. So when you go to these showcase events, a lot of people are surprised when they line up all the infielders and they hit them ground balls at short that they're actually being radared how fast they could throw from short to first base. And when they're put in the outfield, not only are they being radared, but they're obviously checking distance. How easy is it, for example, to throw the ball from right field to third base? So arm strength is a big deal. So the assumption is you can't teach arm strength. Now, we know that differently, but look at it like this. If I'm a great defender, which is defense is one of the 5 tools, and I don't have a very good arm, I have actually eliminated one of the major qualities that a scout would look for. When I talk about scouts, I'm really talking about professional baseball scouts in the highest Division I baseball programs. To play at those levels, the game is played much faster, so arm strength is a necessity. So that is one thing that a scout is looking for. If you're let me just take a step back here too. If you're a pitcher and you have exceptional, incredible arm strength, and you might be a little bit wild, but if a pitcher's up there throwing 92 miles an hour, the assumption is you can't teach a guy to throw faster. That's the assumption. So when somebody's throwing 92 and struggling a little bit with command, they're going to have a lot more likely chance to get in front of a scout, to get a scholarship, or to get drafted, as opposed to another guy who's throwing 82 and who's painting the corners. So that is just a misguided thing that people grow up with, and especially for our last podcast, we talked about the difference between baseball in America versus baseball in the Dominican. So a kid in America might be throwing 82, painting the corners and getting guys out, but the reality is many of the scouts are going outside of the United States to find these harder throwing guys because they're looking for velocity first, and velocity does matter. Part 2 to that is they're looking for guys who can hit the ball harder and hit the ball farther. Power is rare, and when you see a guy like a Bryce Harper, who had right around 40 home runs this year, and you see a guy like Mike Trout, who has this incredible power at the plate, it is something that stands out. So if I was a young baseball player and my dream, my aspiration was to play professional baseball or Division I college level baseball, the reality is this: I need to stand out somehow in some way. And one way to stand out is by throwing the ball faster than 90 to 95% of the other people my age. And the other way to do it is to hit the ball harder and or further than 90 to 95% of people of my age. So throwing the ball fast and hitting the ball harder and farther, hitting power really stands out. That's part 2 of the big 3. And then part 3, if you're a position player, is how fast do you run? When you think about it, if you haven't attended a showcase yet, one of the measurements that often gets run, and I know it's an old measurement, is the 60-yard dash. It's just a basic way to see how fast can you run. But the reality is, if you're going to play a high level of baseball, running fast is another way certainly to stand out. And running fast, if you're one of the faster guys on the field, that could be really ideal, especially for a middle infielder or an outfielder, center fielder, right fielder, and even possibly a left fielder. So it's another way to stand out. And I talk about the big 3. Ideally, in a great world, you'd have a power bat, tremendous arm strength, and the ability to run faster than most of everybody else your age. If you don't, at least be good at 2 out of those 3 things: hitting the ball harder and throwing the ball faster, or some kind of combination and or running faster. Now, everybody always talks about the 5 tools, but what I'm going to lay out to you is this. The one thing that is assumed is when a scout sees a guy with rare hitting power or rare throwing or pitching speed or a rare ability to run, the assumption is that cannot be taught. So if I get a guy, say, who's a pitcher throwing the ball 92 miles an hour and he cannot find the plate very well, the assumption is you can teach somebody to throw strikes. But if you Draft a guy throwing 78 to 82, the assumption is I can't make that guy throw the ball 92. So it is something to work with, and like we've talked about before, and my question to you is, does your training, does your instruction match up with you getting better or being more attractive to Division I college programs and or professional baseball scouts? So that is the question you should ask if you're a parent buying baseball lessons, or he's on a team. Is it matching? Is the work you're doing matching what scouts are looking for? Now, some of you might be saying, but Coach, you didn't mention defense. Obviously, defense is part of the 5 tools and is very, very important. However, I would say this. If you have a great glove and you have a weak arm, that great glove is not going to get you very far. If you have a great glove, you don't hit the ball very hard and you don't hit the ball very far. It's going to be very hard to crack the lineup. So some people out there will think and they will assume, well, my kid is just, he's just not a very big kid, so he can hit the ball hard and far, and he's not going to throw it 90 and what have you. And I would say this to you, it's a very good thing that Dustin Pedroia did not have that attitude. In Pedroia's mind, he didn't buy into he was just smaller. He realized because he was smaller, he had to do things bigger. And when I say bigger, means from his hustle to his energy to his effort to when he threw the ball to when he hit the ball. Pedroia's number one tool was his hitting tool. So his ability to hit the ball. So an easy excuse for out there for many of you is, well, my son is just too small, or my son is just, that's just not the type of player he is. Well, if you're going to stand out, and if you're going to be that guy, I would really, really have you focus on those 3. Throwing the ball faster, hitting the ball harder, and running faster, especially if you're a position player. I would also say catchers oftentimes get confused in terms of what they're trying to develop, because oftentimes I will see catchers who do understand that pop time is an important measurement for how a scout evaluates them. But what many catchers don't realize is overall throwing strength and throwing power is a tremendous way to improve your pop time down a second. So I see a lot of catchers working quicker, which is great. You do need to be quick. I'm not saying you don't. But I see those same catchers not spending enough time on developing their overall throwing velocity and their overall throwing distance. They simply work on the quickness, which is a major disconnect in terms of developing a powerful, quick arm down to second base. So with that said, the next question is, does your training match what the scouts are looking for? And in other words, what is your purpose when you're training? So just throwing out there a few things of what I see out there, there's usually 3 mistakes I see in terms of training purposes. Number 1, I see many people out there today, their main mission is simply to look prettier. That's it. They are been instructed that there is one ideal mechanical model. They have been instructed to death on how to swing the bat or how to throw the ball. And the main goal has become, I am going to look as close as I can to this one ideal mechanical model. And the hope is that simply looking prettier will generate better results. So there's that first mistake, which I've been there, tried that, and I can tell you it doesn't work. Then there's the second mistake, which is what I call misguided intent. And we talk about having intent when you're training. And misguided intent basically means it's just simply working on the wrong things. So, for example, this person may not be so interested in looking pretty, but this person has been pounded into them, for example, at the plate, that everything is all about hitting line drives and ground balls, But yet, the one thing that can make you stand out is hitting the ball harder and further, which means you need to create really good ball flight. Or a pitcher that's been convinced that it's all about mechanics and throwing strikes, and as you get older and as you get stronger, you'll just naturally throw faster. So that is just somebody training with misguided intent. And then there's the other category, which is something I always see, is the lack of awareness, or in other words, also known as the meathead. And the lack of awareness guy, or the meathead, is the person that might have an idea of, he doesn't get over instruction. but he doesn't pay close attention to the results that he's currently getting. And then the result of that, because he's kind of got a meathead quality and doesn't pay attention very well to the current results, he's very slow to make adjustments. And there is nothing more frustrating to any coach than a kid who's slow to make adjustments. This is the guy that gets on the mound and isn't throwing strikes and can adapt and adjust to throwing a strike. This is a guy that comes up to the plate and all weekend is popping the ball up, and cannot make an adjustment or grounding out or whatever the problem or issue is. And that's probably the same guy who misses signs. That's probably the same guy who is constantly making big mistakes on the baseball field. So that's the guy with lack of awareness. And then of course, there's probably one of the worst possible scenarios is the person that practices with no purpose at all. They're the person that they'll go to the batting cages, they'll take some swings. They mistake activity with productivity. They think that just because they're doing something means that they're going to get results, and obviously that's not the case. So when people ask me, okay, Coach Ryan, you've had 11 guys hit or throw a ball 100 miles per hour. You've had over 100 guys throw or hit the ball over 90 miles per hour. What is the secret? And I start with, our secret is that we have a different purpose. Our purpose, even if I'm dealing with a 7 or 8-year-old, is to train him or put him in an environment where hitting the ball harder and farther is the number one goal. It is the number one goal above everything. 2, we are trying to improve our ability to throw the ball, which means not just accurately, we want to improve our throwing distance, we want to improve our throwing speed. And as we know now, better than at any point in time, that means you have to also have a very healthy arm. So being healthy can add to the amount of throwing that you do, can also add to your throwing velocity. So our intent is different. Let me leave you with this on this training with a purpose thing. It's really simple. You can't swing faster by swinging slower. And I know that doesn't sound like really brilliant stuff, but it's true. People who are out there practicing slow or practicing pretty and don't understand that you can develop power, but it starts with you can't swing faster by swinging slower, you can't throw faster by throwing slower, you can't throw farther by throwing shorter. Okay, so right away the difference is our intent is completely different. Now, the mistake some people will make, they'll say, yeah, Coach, you have 100-mile-an-hour guys, you have 90-mile-an-hour guys. But the mistake they make in their mind, they think we take somebody from 98 miles an hour to 101. Or we take somebody from 88 miles an hour to 91. That is not the case at all, because the majority of our guys that have become 90-mile-an-hour athletes, and all of them that have become 100-mile-an-hour athletes, all started with us at a younger age and developed their ability to hit the ball and throw the ball faster over a long period of time. So it is not, what we don't fool people on is it's a quick fix, because it's not. The reality is we are what we repeatedly do. So if I get in the box every day and I swing slow and my whole goal is to be pretty, the result is going to be a slow swing and a pretty swing. If I get in the box every day and I'm training myself to swing hard, hit the ball faster, hit the ball with better flight every day, I start to become what I train. And that is a huge mistake people make. So what I'm going to do now is, from a perspective of teaching in this, is I'm going to take you through a couple things that we do at Fastball USA. One, I'm going to give you a little secret that we talk about, and that is the key of training with intent. And if you haven't gotten it, earlier this fall I came out with the book Creating the 100-Mile-Per-Hour Hitter, and I knew I'd get a lot of slack for creating that book. So there's been obviously people who are critical of it, and some people who absolutely embrace it and think it's the greatest thing on earth. So I get it, but I'm going to give you an example right now of an easy way or a hard way, depending on how you look at it, to create more hitting power by doing something really simple. And that simple thing is by training with intent. So let's start with this. We call it our tee distance drill. You could do it off the tee. I would start it off a tee, but you could also do it in soft toss and batting practice. So here's how it goes. You would simply start, for example, regardless of the age of the athlete, is you would start with a tee and some baseballs out in, say, short center field. And the goal is really simple. You're telling your hitter the goal is to drive the ball off the tee, over the fence, and at very least off the fence on a fly. And we want to do that until we've mastered it. So if I start, say, in short center field, and I can do that, say, 60 to 70% of the time, I would say 70% in my world, I consider that mastering the exercise. So if I can drive 7 balls over the fence, or I could hit the fence 7 out of 10 times, if I've gotten 70%, I have mastered that distance. So really simple. All we do then is we take the tee and then we back up, and we back up a little bit. Now, I don't think the magic formula is how much. I just wouldn't do it by much. So let's just say you back up 10 feet. So now you've backed up 10 feet, and now you're at 10 feet further, and now you're focusing on the same thing. I'm trying to play home run derby, trying to drive the ball over the fence, and I'm trying to drive the ball at very least off the fence on a fly. And you continue to do that. Now, 10 feet further, you would think is slightly more challenging. So you may not be at 70% when you first try that event, but you continue at that distance, whether it takes you a week or 12 weeks or 6 months. You continue at that distance until you master the ability to hit the ball further. Once you've mastered that 70%, of course, you back up another 10 feet. And you go about the same process. I'm trying to drive balls over the fence. I'm trying to hit balls off the fence. And you continue that process by mastering once you get to 70%, and then you continue to slowly back up until you get to the point where you're hitting the ball over the fence from home plate. So, and or off the fence from home plate. And I've even added, once you start getting a little bit more challenged, that we also talk about one hopping the fence, or two hopping the fence. Or you get to a point where no matter what, every single ball has got to be hit to the fence. Okay, so there's various ways you can track that, but for the most part, there's a big difference in our world, because when we go to the park, we'll say, we're going to go play home run derby. So right there, it starts with a mindset of, I'm not practicing, I'm having fun, number one. Number two, I'm challenging myself slightly beyond my current capability. Last week, I couldn't hit this ball 10 feet further. This week, I can. And that is what growing and progression is all about. So a simple drill is simply slowly adding distance over time, assuming that you're mastering that drill. Now, some people would be like, well, Coach Ryan, that's not working on technique. Well, here's the mistake most people make. Your mistake when you're hitting a ball off a tee or a soft toss or BP, when you start to struggle at hitting it a certain distance, that starts to expose your actual disconnects as a hitter, your actual things that you need to work on. And by adapting and adjusting to improve the goal, you're going to improve swing technique. So, for example, if you're in your mind you're thinking, well, if the kid's trying to hit the ball over the fence, he's going to create a bad swing. Well, there's a distance where that's not going to work anymore. So then that's where it becomes, all right, can you hit every ball to the fence? Can you one hop the fence? Can you two hop the fence? Can you hit it off the fence? Can you hit it over the fence? All of that works together in creating a more efficient type swing. So what I'm telling you is the goal, like we talked about in our last podcast, has a tendency to improve the swing. Secondly, by paying attention to the results and adapting from the results, that will over time improve the swing as well. But what does that take? It takes taking a lot of swings. It also takes the ability to work on trial and error, which I feel is very, very important in the process. And parents, if you're listening out there, trial and error, you have to be more patient with your kids. Let them fail, let them struggle, and just guide them to the success. Because failure and struggle is not always bad. We always talk about a Fastball USA is do not mistake failing with being a failure. Failing is really the first step to becoming successful as long as you're making an adjustment. And that's very important. So what I would say to you on that is that works with everything. So if I had a 7-year-old kid and I was practicing and I want him to get better at throwing, I really don't want to dominate the environment by teaching him how to throw. I want him to throw accurately and easily at a certain distance before I back up. And when he's accurate at a certain distance and pretty easily throwing it to me, I will just slowly back up, and I will slowly back up, and I'll never go further back beyond what he could throw accurately. Okay, so now, am I telling him how to throw? No, but what I'm telling you is for the body to organize a very good throw with greater distance, you have to do something right. And mechanically, you're probably going to be pretty good. And it's the same thing with hitting. Okay? I believe I heard somebody explain one day, they said, if I could throw the ball 330 feet and throw it on a spot without that player moving at 330 feet, that's a sign somebody's got pretty good mechanics. And that is how we look at mechanics. So a lot of people get a little confused because they're chasing the looking pretty thing, and then oftentimes that's a flawed process. So my question to you now is your environment, is it technique dominated or is it intent dominated? Meaning, is it dominated by, I just want to look prettier and God, I hope I'm making my coach happy? Or is it intent, meaning my environment revolves around the intent, for example, to hit the ball hard and hit the ball with great ball flight, or to throw the ball accurately but throw the ball faster. I'm not just trying to hit a target, I'm trying to throw the ball through a target. And there's a complete difference. So are you technique dominated or intent dominated? That is completely two different things. So there are a lot of people out here listening to this, man. Coach Ryan, he doesn't like to work on technique. And actually, that could be nothing further than the truth. So when it comes to being efficient, we are very, very aware of what efficiency is. So I'll give you an example of that. I could throw the ball faster. I could throw the ball fast and not be efficient. I could throw the ball for strikes and not be efficient. So we do look at that. And from a throwing standpoint, what we pay close attention to is arm health. If somebody's throwing with pain and he's just because he throws fast and throws accurate, we have to look at how can we be more efficient with the throwing motion to eliminate that pain, because otherwise, very shortly, they will not continue to have a very strong arm and be able to throw the ball accurately. And it's the same thing from hitting, and I'll give you a different perspective on hitting. Okay, hitting, I could have 100 mile an hour bat speed. That does not equal 100 mile per hour exit speed. So just because I swing fast does not mean I'm efficient. So, for example, when we do a T-test, it's very possible for a kid to swing the bat 100 miles per hour, and the ball to come off his bat 20 miles an hour. And I know that's an extreme, but I'm giving you an example. I could swing it fast but miss-hit the ball. I could have a fast swing but not have good timing. I could have a quick swing but pull off the curveball. So bat speed in itself is not everything, but the exit speed, how fast the ball comes off your bat, is everything, because that's the result. Now, if 100 mile an hour bat speed creates 100 mile per hour exit speed, that's a sign of efficiency. Now, if 100 mile per hour bat speed creates 106 to 108 mile per hour exit speed, that's a sign of being really efficient. And that's how we look at our technique through our guys, is the effort and energy we're putting into something coming out and then some. So that we do have 3 rules or 3 guides we do in our classes almost on every single day to make sure that we're working on efficiency. And this will make the people who love technique maybe a little bit happier and make you breathe easier. We have 3 categories. Number 1, we want our players to see it. And what I mean by see it is we want to give them visuals of elite Hall of Fame players, Hall of Fame hitters, Hall of Fame pitchers, or whatever the position is, or Major League, long-time proven Major League players, and we want to give them the visual by showing them slow motion video, also quick motion so they can see how they move, but we want to give them a visual of what they're trying to do. What do great hitters do alike, or great throwers do alike? Because there are certain things that they'll all do alike. We just don't want to overemphasize everybody looking the same, because there are certain things that they also don't do alike. So we will let them see what they do alike and give them visuals almost every day in our training center. We will use visual. The second thing in part 2 is to create an environment where they can feel it. And what I mean by feel it is, it's one thing to see it. Now we have to find a way to reinforce what that has to feel like. And that is where our drill sets come in, where we talk about breaking things into small movements. In other words, for example, just one part of the movement pattern. And then we will go to our drill sets where we're trying to reinforce how something should feel. And that's what our drill set is. So we go from seeing it to feeling it with our drill sets. For example, you got to feel how the lower half is supposed to work, okay? And then the last thing in the third part is then to test it. So I am seeing it, I'm feeling it, and now I'm going to test it. How would you test it? Well, for example, our hitters will test it to see how well does the ball come off their bat. Is the ball flight good or bad? Is the ball exit speed greater or is it slower? Is the bat speed getting any better? Because if I'm making changes to a player, changes doesn't mean they're getting better. And that's where most coaching ends up screwing up. Just because you're changing the